as things come in, I need to be able to move it out. So that accumulation is toxic. It's toxic to the
Yes.
planet. It's toxic to nature, and it needs to be free flowing. So sustainability, part of the root of sustainability is that notion of being a center of distribution, not a center of
Absolutely.
accumulation.
Hi, and welcome to another episode of the peopleHum interview series. This is your host Neha at peopleHum. peopleHum is an end-to-end, one-view, integrated human capital management automation platform, the winner of the 2019 Global Cody Award for HCM that's specifically built for crafted employee experiences and the future of work. We run the peopleHum blog and channel that receives more than 200,000 visitors a year, and we also publish several interviews with well-known names globally every month. We have with us today Blaine Bartlett, President and CEO of Avatar Resources. Blaine is recognized as one of the world's top leadership and executive coaches and is featured as one of the world's greatest motivators in the nationally broadcasted television series of the same name. His work focuses on the thesis that business, as the most pervasive force on the planet, is charged with taking responsibility for the whole. His life's work is dedicated to ensuring that business leaders develop the skills, competency, and capacity to lead such an undertaking as it is key to them, their people, and their organizations in order to thrive. That's a very wonderful thing indeed, Blaine, and we're looking forward to hearing more about it. Welcome to peopleHum.
Well, thank you for having me. I appreciate the invitation, and I look forward to the conversation.
Thank you, Blaine. So your company, Avatar Resources, has been running for a great 33 years. So as its president and CEO, can you tell us a little bit about the company and the work that you do over there?
Yeah, well, as the name kind of indicates, Avatar Resources, Sanskrit word, means, one of the meanings is an idea in physical form, an ideal in physical form. And that's essentially what any company is. It's an idea that has taken form.
Absolutely.
And so the work that we do is organized around specifically the leadership activity in a company, but it's organized about how do we bring life to, and how do we bring the idea of the company to life, and how do we bring it out to the various stakeholders that are touched by the activities of that business. And that oftentimes is a challenge, because as companies grow, they move away from slowly that founding kernel, that founding principle that gave the company its life to begin with.
Yes, yes.
So that's the work that we do, and we do it all over the world. Like you mentioned, the company's 33 years old. We've got at one point in time we had offices in 5 countries, and we work with companies, some of the largest companies on the planet, as well as some very small companies, startups. I mean, I enjoy working with entrepreneurs, and primarily because I can see immediate results as a consequence of working with large companies. It takes a long time to see some things happen sometimes.
Absolutely. So, Blaine, a follow-up question. So, is it different working with large-scale organizations, and is the approach different when it comes to small-scale organizations?
Well, the distinction is in the scale. The work itself isn't that different, because both large companies and small companies have something in common, and that's that they have people. And people have essentially the same issues interacting with each other. They have the same issues in trying to bring their product or service to market. And the major difference there is one of scale. But when we work on a focused basis.
That's great. That's great. You're an international best-selling author of Compassionate Capitalism. That sounds very interesting. So could you maybe speak a bit about the principles of business that you've highlighted in your book?
Yeah, I think that, again, I'll go back to the one thing that every business has in common, which is people. And I mention that because people are always in relationship. They're in relationship, obviously, with each other, but they're also in relationship with the business's founding principle. They're in relationship with values, in relationship with the vision of the company. And I mention all of that because to the degree that the relationships in all of their varied forms are actually working well, the organization is going to be pretty successful long term. And the focus is on relationship. Now, when we start looking at relationship through that lens or through that filter, connection is essentially what we're talking about. How are people connected to, and then fill in the blank. Connected to vision, connected to values, connected to each other. And with connection comes compassion. Compassion cannot exist if I don't in some way feel connected. So the thesis of the book, Compassionate Capitalism, and it was, as you mentioned, a number one bestseller internationally. We were number one in 5 different business categories in 5 different international markets. And the thesis there is that business touches everything. Business has a relationship with everything. And business leaders have, as a consequence of that, a moral as well as a functional responsibility to take responsibility and act compassionately for the whole of the planet, for the whole of the impact that the business has on all stakeholders, not just their customers, not just their employees, not just their vendors, but everybody in the community. Yeah, and it has a ripple effect. And compassion is the focal point. Yeah, how do I behave compassionately as a company? How do I make decisions with compassion in mind? I do a lot of work with in the medical field, and doctors take an oath, and it's called the Hippocratic Oath. First, do no harm. And I actually believe that business leaders, business managers, business owners should also take the same kind of an oath. First, do no harm. And if my business activities are doing no harm, by definition, they're going to be doing good. And Absolutely. I'll probably be pretty healthy.
Yes, that's a very interesting take on it. Thank you. As an active member of the Transformational Leadership Council, do you think that every leader practices leadership in different capacities? And I know that this is a question that is very heavily debated as to, what leadership exactly is and what are the right ways of doing it. So according to your expertise, what advice would you give the leaders of the future?
Well, first of all, I would begin by understanding what is meant by leadership. As you mentioned, there's oftentimes disagreement. Leadership is an activity, and it's the activity of, and there's 2 parts to this, co-creating coordinated movement. And if I'm co-creating, by definition, ownership is transferring. I mean, it's not just my idea, now it's also our idea, because you've taken part in it. So co-creating coordinated movement. And coordinated movement has to do with how we actually conduct ourselves with each other and in the business world. The more coordination there is, the more elegance, the more ease, the less unintended consequences. So leaders that are paying attention to co-creating coordinated movement will be successful. And what's interesting about that is that it doesn't require a title to do that. I can be an entry-level person in any organization, and if I'm paying attention to co-creating coordinated movement, I, by definition, will be causing elegant movement, and I will be impacting in a generative way, in a healthy way, the business and its activities. So the leadership exists throughout the organization, not just at the top. It literally lives throughout the organization, and many people don't think of it that way.
Yes, absolutely. In fact, now that you mention it, I have also not thought of leadership that way. The fact that people are so interconnected to each other and that leadership exists at every stage and not just with the leader at their stage itself is something that is definitely interesting and worth exploring, of course.
Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, please go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, you had asked, what advice I would give to leaders of the future.
Yes.
And within the framework of that definition, transforming your idea of what you think a leader is, and step into the idea that I'm always causing movement. Am I elegant? Am I elegant? So have that be kind of in the front of everything that you're doing in an organization. I'm causing movement. Is it getting me what I want?
Absolutely.
And if it is, wonderful. If it's not, step back, co-create coordinated movement. What do I need to do?
I feel like that's a very fundamental way of understanding to what extent your leadership is going to. Because like you just mentioned, leadership has many interpretations. And for me, what a leader might look like might depend on my experiences, my journey throughout organizations. But what you just mentioned is so fundamental in its nature that I feel like it can be like a thumb rule that everybody can follow. So thank you so much for that. It's a wonderful perspective. You've spoken about sustainability as something being important that can eventually uplift the quality of our life. So with respect to compassionate capitalism that we just discussed, could you speak a bit more on the importance of sustainability in the corporate sector? Because I feel like that's the need of the hour and that's where we're heading. And like a few years ago, we were discussing about the future of work and we were talking about technology. I feel like a lot of people are going to start talking about sustainability in the corporate world, and that is a discussion that does need to happen. So what are your views on that?
Well, I would come back to the notion that business has a responsibility for the well-being of the whole. Yes. So when we're looking at sustainability, one of the things that we look at is how do we use resources and how do we actually design our service or product so that we aren't, how would I say this? We aren't leveraging in a way that is not sustainable over time.
Right.
And so there's obviously environmental impact with that, but there's also social impact that comes into play with that. And it comes into the conversation around with my product. How do we make sure that any waste in the production process doesn't do damage, that it actually gets recycled? And I use nature as a great teacher. There is nothing wasted in nature. Nature actually is sustainable in the whole. Nothing goes to waste. Things are always being produced, but nothing is going to waste. And everything has a life cycle. And in that life cycle, there are allowances made for how, at the tail end of that life cycle, that remnant gets reincorporated back into a new generation. The leaves fall from the tree, but they become compost for next season. That sort of a thing. That sensibility is compassionate. Nature is compassionate. Sometimes it doesn't seem like it is, but it truly is compassionate in the sense that it recognizes that connection. Everything is connected. There is no waste. There is no overconsumption. And part of sustainability is recognizing what is enough. Becoming, this is my language for this, and this is kind of my orientation. And this is for business leaders, and it's for actually life. The purpose in life is not to accumulate wealth. The purpose in life, the purpose of business is not to accumulate anything. It's to actually become a center of distribution. And that's where sustainability comes into play. As things come in, I need to be able to move it out. So that accumulation is toxic. It's toxic to the planet. It's toxic to nature. And it needs to be free flowing. So sustainability, part of the root of sustainability is that notion of being a center of distribution, not a center of accumulation.
Absolutely. I feel like that's a very, very interesting way of looking at it. Blaine, lastly, do you have any passing remarks for our audience?
I've got you get me to start talking, and it's hard to have them stop talking. I've got a lot of things I could say, but I recognize the time frame that we have here. In just two things, I think would I leave your listeners with. One is each of us is unique. We are incredibly. There has never been and never will be anybody like us. So part of my journey in life is to begin to discover what that uniqueness is, and then bring that to people. This goes to the notion of the center of distribution. What's the gift that I bring? Because that gift is needed. That gift is not only needed, it's wanted. So, and it's a journey of discovery. When I was your age, I didn't know exactly what my gift was. I knew I had one, but I was willing to just kind of explore. So curiosity, be curious. And in a business context, curiosity is also what we want to pay attention to. The tagline on my book, Compassionate Capitalism, a journey to the soul of business. I think the journey to the soul is something that we all are continuously undertaking. Yes. That journey back to that source. And I'm not talking about this in a religious sense. I'm talking about this in a life affirming sense. And that's where my gift is. So be willing to be on the journey. I'm always on the journey anyway. I can't not be on the journey just because I'm breathing. But not losing sight of the fact that I am continuously evolving and bringing gifts to the world, bringing gifts to my family, bringing the gift of who I am in small and large ways. Yeah, and celebrate that. Absolutely celebrate that. I am in awe of people. I truly am. I'm in awe of people because there is never anybody that has occupied space or time in exactly the same way that you or I do. And that is huge. That's immensely powerful.
Right. Thank you so much for that. I feel like that's such a fresh perspective to things, and that really makes you question everything that you're doing. So I feel like even though, we feel like we want to talk about many things, I really do, but I feel like that was a wonderful note to end this interview on, Blaine. Thank you so much for that.
Oh, Nia, my pleasure. Absolutely.
Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us today. I wish you and your business all the very best.
Thank you, and yours as well, and continue the good work you're doing with peopleHum. I love the idea. I love the platform that you're doing, and you've got some wonderful guests that are coming on. And I say that in all humility. They're bringing some very great information to audiences. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you for being here.